Hello, welcome back to my channel, and if you are new here, hi, my name is Taylor. I am a law student and a personal trainer, just taking you all along the law school journey with me and showing you how I do my best to live a healthy, balanced, and productive life in the process. It is summer break right now, so we're switching it up from the pure law school content, and I thought it'd be fun to do a little deep dive into the books that I've read so far this year. There are like 37 of them, so, which is a lot. I don't know when, something like snapped in me last June, and I just like randomly picked up reading again after like a year and a half of a dry spell, like literally not picking up a single book. Don't know how that happened, but here we are. I have now adopted reading as my like chosen form of fun, and basically kind of used it as like a wind down and like a get away from law school type deal during the school year, and then like fully went hard on it as soon as we were on summer break. So I think probably half of these books are all books that were read in the months of May and June after spring semester ended. So that's kind of the pace of things. But I'm going to literally just, we're just gonna fly through this list. It's going to be a mix of like me just like naming things, and then for some books that I like, you know, the actual like favorites, we'll chat a little bit more. But I just figured it's easiest to just run through all of them. I also post all of my books on my Instagram stories as well. So if you follow me on Instagram, you've probably seen most of these covers before. So anyways, let's chat books. Also, please don't comment on the state of my nails. I have lost 4 of them. And then I have the other, 6 that are completely normal, but I haven't had time to go to a nail salon. So that's something that will get fixed at some point, but not yet. So we're filming this video with extremely wonky nails. I literally just have like my Goodreads up on my computer. I also have my Goodreads in my bio too. So not bio, description. That's what it's called on a YouTube video. So if you want to follow me that way too. I don't post a lot like about the books. I literally just use it to update like literally what I'm reading. But if you're not looking for reviews, if you're just looking for what's on Taylor's bookshelf, that does have that. With that introduction out of the way, let's just dive in. There is a mix of genres in here. I am not like a one genre only person, so you'll see it's a little all over the place. There's some nonfiction in here, there's some fiction, there's some like YA, there's like, I don't know what like generic adult fiction is called, but there's some of that too. It's a little bit of everything. So hopefully little something for everybody in this video, regardless of what types of books you're into. So the first one is this one was actually a required reading for school, but I got to count it as a book because it was an entire book. And it's Getting to Yes, a Negotiating Agreement Without Giving In by Roger Fisher and William Ury. It was required reading. That's all I gotta say about that. Next up was This Fight Is Our Fight, Elizabeth Warren. I love Elizabeth Warren, so I just keep reading her books. So I've got her like new one on hold at the library, and it's a long wait because I still have my DC library card, and so any like political books just perpetually have an extremely long wait. So I will read that eventually. Next up is Beach Read by Emily Henry. Cute little fluffy, we love a good fluffy romance moment. Then Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. This is part of a like 7-book long series that I have like friends who have like highly recommended it to me. So I enjoy it. I've read the 2nd book, which we'll get to later. And then, I have the 3rd waiting on a hold at the library. That's how a lot of my entire reading schedule is determined by when things become available at the library, because I don't like buying books because I just don't have a good place to store them, and I move I've moved enough that the concept of trying to move a box of books, no. So, so I don't really collect books with the exception of like ones I love and everything I get from the library. So that's kind of where that is. Next up is This Is How It Always Is by Lori Frankel. It's basically about like parents of a transgender daughter and trying to handle like their like journey with that and like figuring out how to be good parents. Next up is Notorious RBG by Erin Carmen. Once again, we're doing political memoirs, so it's a good one. The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. This one was like a super like highly recommended book. It's great. And then Three Women by Lisa Taddeo. Also, this one kind of like follows three women's sex lives, which seems like racy. It's actually not at all. Pretty interesting. Stamped from the beginning, but the like the teen readers edition, I read this as part of, I'm like in a book club with some friends and we've been doing a lot of like anti-racist literature, and that was our book, and we all decided to go for like the young readers version instead of the traditional version, because the traditional one is a very, very dense text, and this one's a lot more like digestible. So we all read that, and this was like in the middle of, you know, finals being like in the middle of law school being what it was. So simple and digestible, great contrast. Next up is The Poppy War. This is another part of a series. This is by R.F. Kuang. I love this series. Someone marketed this to me. Like the reason that I started reading this book was because someone was like, oh yeah, this is like Avatar: The Last Airbender if Azula was the Avatar, which is like, oh, I don't know if it's a weird way to sell that book, but it's a great book. I love it, and I'm waiting to get the second one. Once again, on hold from my library, but I love it. It's a very intense, very dark book. So like, if you're the type of person who's like sensitive to certain like content, especially like violent content, definitely check out, like, people keep like comprehensive lists of like trigger warnings for books on the internet places. So definitely look at those if you are like sensitive to certain type of content or just don't like to read it, because it is a very, very intense book, but it is phenomenal. So this one is definitely one of my favorites, followed by what is I think my number one favorite for the year so far, which is Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. I read Six of Crows at the end of last year, and then read Crooked Kingdom basically once again as soon as my library got it off of hold, which was a perilously long wait because Six of Crows ends on a bit of a cliffhanger. And so I was just sitting there waiting for the resolution of that. I love this book. I love the Six of Crows duology. It is like, it's my love. I've watched the Shadow and Bone Netflix show like too many times to count at this point. I'm literally wearing a necklace that says "No mourners, no funerals." So yeah, I love that series. I love all of the characters, and it's such a good book. It's like YA, so if you're not a YA person, it might not be your jam, but I just I love everything about it. Yeah, that's it. I will and can and will obsess over that anytime. I literally purchased physical copies of both of those books, like the collector's edition copies, because that's how much I love them. So that's your answer to Taylor's favorite book of 2021. Next up is Queens of Geek by Jen Wild. This one's kind of honestly. So take that with a grain of salt. Tomorrow Will Be Different is the next book on my list by Sarah McBride. It's a memoir. Great book. Also, don't recommend. I read this book while I was getting my hair done. So I was literally like sitting in a salon. And it's emotional. So like I was just like sitting there like being like, I'm not gonna cry in a hair salon right now. And like, it's sad. So maybe don't read it in a public place, but do read it. It's a good book. And next up is Trick Mirror by Gia Tolentino. It's a bunch of essays. It's pretty interesting. Then Hood Feminism by Mickey Kendall. I was just on like a nonfiction run for a little bit there. This one, also a book club book, great way to like dive into some not fully like delved into issues of like intersectional feminism and what feminism should be. So if that's an area of interest, it's a really solid book. Next up, Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. This book took me so long to get into. Like, I just didn't enjoy it until like the last 50 pages. So it's a fine book, and I know people who like absolutely adored it. It took me so long to get into it. So, and then the following one is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. Loved this book. This one it's like the title, I feel like kind of gives you the vibes. Like it's a mystery type, like murder mystery type book. Read this book all in one sitting the night before my civil procedure exam. That was a good time. Next up, Crown of Midnight. I've already talked about Throne of Glass, so there's no need to really get into too much detail about that one other than the fact that it's part of a series. The next 5 books are all books that I read in a single day because I just decided I had a week between finals and write-on, and I was like, I'm gonna read a book a day. So cranked through all of these. First up is In a Holidays by Christina Lauren, which, yes, May was a great time to read a Christmas book. Cute, fluffy, rom-com, end of story. Becoming by Michelle Obama was the next one. This is a book that is literally, I have a physical copy of this book as well, and I had it for 3 years because I got it like right before I went into the reading slump that I mentioned at the beginning of this video. So it kind of got neglected and it just sat on my bookshelf for a while. And when I decided I was going to read a book a day, I was like, okay, cool. So we're going to somehow slot the Michelle Obama book that's been sitting on my shelf for 3 years in there. So I cranked that out in a day. It's a great book. She's like a very conversational writer. Like it just feels like, you know, like having a little chat with Michelle Obama while you read it. Next up is Golden Sun by Pierce Brown. This is the second book in a series called Red Rising, which is another fantasy series. Once again, fairly violent, so do your research before you dive straight into that one, but also a really solid series that I really enjoyed. It's kind of like Hunger Games, but a lot more grown up. Also in space. Yeah, it happens in space. That's cool too. Next up is What If It's Us by Becky Albertalli and Adam Silvera. It's just a cute little teen rom-com energy. That's it. This Time Next Year by Sophie Cousins is the next one. Also rom-com energy, cute, fluffy. We love it. Next up is The Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy by Mackenzie Lee. I had read the first book in this series, which is like The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue, last year, and so I felt the need to read the second one. It's YA. It's kind of average, honestly. So next up is Boyfriend Material by Alexis Hall. This is a book that was recommended because it had like similar energy to Red, White, and Royal Blue, which I don't know if I actually agree to the extent that I think they get lumped in the same box because they're both like gay romance, like gay rom-com. And people stick all of those in a box, and also because the covers are relatively similar. Like it's both like dark-haired guy and like blonde dude standing side by side, or like standing like catty corner to each other. So I feel like people just, you know, match them up, but also a good read, cute. Next up is Invisible Women by Caroline Criado Perez. This one is a great book. Loved this one. This is probably one of my favorite nonfiction ones that I read this year. It's like data bias between men and women. It will make you angry. A lot of nonfiction does. I feel like a lot of nonfiction will make you angry, and that's one of them. Girl in Pieces by Kathleen Glasgow. I don't have much to say about that one. Morning Star by Pierce Brown. Follow up to Golden Sun. Same thing. We're working our way through series. Next up is Medical Apartheid by Harriet Washington. Another book great to read if you just want to be filled with rage. It is a excellently written book. It is extremely infuriating. Just like everything, like the history and ongoing to present things that have like occurred in our country and these injustices that people have been forced to endure. Next up is Quicksand by Malin Pearson Giolito. This is like a Swedish, it's like a Swedish court drama. Don't ask me. I have like a friend who recommended it to me, and like, I feel like it's not one of the books that like I've seen talked about. Like there are certain books that like, you know, you see hyped up enough like on like Goodreads and on people's like social media pages. I am very heavily on like the book side of TikTok right now, so I get a lot of book recommendations from there. Haven't seen this one anywhere. Feel like it's a very hole in the wall pick, but it was pretty solid, honestly. Next up is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I literally read this book in a day. I wouldn't say like it's a favorite, but it's cute and it's good. And I know a lot of people really loved it. And it was one of those books too that like, even though I'm like saying it's not like one of my favorites, it was one of those books that I also couldn't put down. So that gives it gets credit for that. Next up is Cast by Isabel Wilkerson, another really, really solid. I was on a run of like great nonfiction books. I love this book. I think it's great and super informative, and so is her other book, The Warmth of Other Suns. It's a slightly older book, and then this one came out fairly recently, and I had been stuck on a very long waiting list for it at my library. Common theme here. So finally got that and finally read it, and very good. Next up is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. If I had to pick a number 2 book for the year behind Crooked Kingdom, it is this one. I loved it. I could not put it down. I think so much about it is great. Like it's like brilliantly like written. It's just really compelling. Like I love the like old Hollywood glamour. Also like really solid bi representation. All of the above, great. Really enjoyed reading it. Next is Ta-Nehisi Coates' Between the World and Me. This is it's a relatively short book. I think this is actually the one that currently holds the like title on my Goodreads stats for like shortest book of the year. And it's just basically it's kind of written in style of like a letter written towards his son. And then next after that is Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reed. This is another book. A couple of people recommended this one to me. I don't know why I say that, as if I don't get all of my book ideas from other people. Like pretty much everything is a recommendation from someone else, or a recommendation that I found off of TikTok. That's where I get all of my books from. I love books where there are a lot of like moving parts and they're all somehow connected. And you kind of like figure out the connections more and more as the story goes on. And this is very much one of them. And you'll like also, it's interesting to like, it's one of those books where your like expectations and your thoughts about characters change a lot too, I think, throughout the book, and throughout kind of as the narrative unfolds, which is fun. Next is When They Call You a Terrorist by Patrice Concours. This is it's a memoir. She's like heavily, you know, centered in the Black Lives Matter movement, and is just, it's a good solid memoir and a good read. And then finally we have The Marriage Game by Sarah Desai, another very cute, fluffy little rom-com. So we love just throwing those in there. It's great. So I truly was not kidding about being all over the place. Like we have like things that I'm telling you, like, please go look up trigger warnings in advance. And then I just have this like handful of like extreme fluff. So that's, once again, we get a little bit of everything in here. So, and that brings us to now. So that was like June 30th I finished that last one the last day of June. So that's a full 6 months. And so I'm like currently reading things, and we'll probably do a second half of the year wrap up at some point that probably won't have as many books on it, because 37. I don't know how I did that. I ran a poll on my Instagram where I was like, should I up it to 60 because I'm at 37 and it's only halfway through the year? Or do we all think that fall semester is going to kill me? And I really appreciate that every single person I went to law school with voted that fall semester is going to kill me. I think they're correct. So we're sticking with the 50 goal, and I get to feel like really accomplished if I beat it. But yeah, I think that's probably an accurate representation of my reading pace for the rest of the year, because I will get a lot busier than how I was in May and June, were like very like free time heavy months, and fall semester is not going to be free time heavy at all. Very much the opposite energy. So there we go. Those are my books of the year so far and kind of general thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more from me, hit the subscribe button down below, and I'll see you soon for another video. Bye.